Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Football Friday here on Birds 365, getting you ready for Week 12 in the NFL. The 8-2 Philadelphia Eagles taking on the 5-5 LA Rams in an NFC battle. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Football Friday, brother?
Doing well. Finally feels like football. A little bit chilly out. You got a snow game last night. And of course, the Eagles, just as it's starting to feel like football, they're going to Los Angeles. So,
Yeah, right. They get to watch that, and then they get to go cozy up in that LA sunshine
yeah.
and take on the LA Rams. What'd you take away from that game last night? I didn't catch the full thing. I had some business to tend to, but when I turned it on, my first thing was, "Holy shit! Look at this snow!"
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. It was one of those games where it was really thick, heavy snow.
Yeah. It's always fun to see a snow game.
Yeah, it is.
But I got to tell you, that's social media, man. I'm on there this morning. I'm like, there's people complaining about snow games. That's not football weather. Perfect football weather is a dome. And I'm like, what do you, God, these people just live to be contrarians just for the sake of being contrarians. Obviously, everybody enjoys it. No, that's the point.
Yeah,
You want
right.
to see somebody fight through the elements. That's what football's been about for many, many years. And as we shift towards warmer weather, we don't get to see it as much. And every time you see it, everybody gets excited. It's not the worst thing in the world, especially on Thursday night. But yeah, another example of a divisional game that you think Pittsburgh's having a great season, Cleveland's going to tank, and this and that. And one situation, Pittsburgh is down their left tackle, and they're playing Myles Garrett, the Cleveland Browns, and Myles has 3 sacks, and they go steal a game, and that's what happens in the NFL.
Yeah, no doubt.
One little shift on the chessboard can be the difference in a game. And obviously, Jameis Winston made a bunch of plays. They're better with anybody playing quarterback than Deshaun Watson. So, I mean, that's one of the great downfalls of football history.
Yeah, he is a funny guy to watch, Jameis Winston, with the interviews and stuff. I mean, he is the whole spectacle. It is funny watching him.
Yeah, and he's his problem. He's got talent. Everybody knows he's got talent.
Yeah.
I mean, former number 1 overall pick, but always didn't take care of the football. Had that YOLO mentality. Just turned it over consistently. Never been able to turn off that spigot, so to speak. So, he can do some things, and obviously it's still a bad season for Cleveland. But when you beat one of your top rivals in a snow game, at least it gets the fan base excited for a couple hours.
Yeah, no, it was a good game though. It was a classic football game, and it made the most of it because you're playing a 2-8 team. Obviously, it's a good division rivalry, but you play a 2-8 team, not many tune in, and then you get the snow element, and all of a sudden it's a classic game to the finish, which was awesome to see. John, let's dive into this Eagles Rams matchup. We'll have Scott Grayson coming up at 8:20. Hopefully, I want to welcome and thank everybody for being here this morning. Real Zeal, Slager, B Mo, Brian Fleming, Fred, Dez. Appreciate all it. Keith Johnson, good to see everybody this morning. Make sure you guys smash that like button for us. We've been crushing it on the likes here on Birds 365, and the show is doing very good. So big thanks to all of you guys in the chat. Johnny Mac, diving into this game, man. Let's go to injuries first because now it looks like potentially Devonta Smith could miss this game. He was out again at practice yesterday. What do you know on the Eagles' injuries right now?
Yeah, Devontae's the only one I'm concerned about, and I'll be down there later this morning. This will be the final day. If he's not out there today, it's pretty clear he's probably going to be ruled out.
Yeah.
Later this afternoon. But he's one of those players. I go back to last week. From when Jordan Mailata got injured, I'm like, they're not going to bring him back on Washington week, on a short week where they don't even practice. They're gonna take the mini bye. Logically, give him the extra week. You get a full practice, then he'll be back against the Rams. And they're like, nope, he's ready to go. Throw him out there against Washington, and he played beautifully. Point I'm trying to make with that is, if he's cleared, he's going to play. It doesn't matter if he misses practice Wednesday and Thursday. He's one of those guys. He's one of those deference players, I'd like to call him. If he's cleared, he's going to play. And he's been dealing with this hamstring for a number of weeks now. Obviously, it's not serious. If it were serious hamstring, they wouldn't have played him, as you saw earlier in the season with AJ and Dallas and Jordan. So he's been fighting through it, but he was limping, and that's we're talking about a long time now, over a week, when he was limping coming off the field, because that was the Thursday night game against Washington. So just because you're hurting a little bit after the game doesn't mean you can't play or you can't move forward. That's this time of year in the NFL. Maybe they were just trying to manage him through the week, but we'll get those answers today. If he's not out there today, I think he's going to be ruled out. And look, I mean, this passing offense, we've been talking about it all week here, is not living up to its expectations. And it's not going to help if they don't have Devonta Smith.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's Rams secondary is really, when you look at this defense, it's who you probably want to pick on from an offensive perspective. We will see what the Birds can do. John, this has been lingering, though, for a couple weeks with Devonta Smith. I don't want to say, is it worth? I mean, I don't know how close he is. You haven't seen him. You didn't see him at all yesterday, did you?
Nope. Moved
Yeah,
into
so
the
that's
bubble
2
because of
days
the
now. You
rain.
didn't see him at all. Normally, the dudes who are out, you watch them
Yeah.
on Sky
Well,
Field, or they're
as an
out there.
example,
Yeah,
Jalix Hunt and Milton Williams did not practice on Wednesday, but they were out there. Jalix was working on the side field. He's dealing with a little bit of an ankle injury.
right.
Milton, dealing with a foot, was watching. They were out there. Devonta was not. And they're back at practice in a limited way Thursday. So it's pretty clear. I'm talking about Milton and Jalix. It's pretty clear that they're just managed them during the week to get them to the game. Not clear that that's what's going on with Devonta this week.
Yeah, got to wonder where. And I don't know his status, obviously, but I mean, you don't want this to linger too long with we being in week 12. We're now 6 weeks away from the NFL playoffs, or 7 weeks away from the NFL playoffs. We need Smitty healthy for that run, so it'll be interesting to see how they handle that. From the injury front for the Rams, John, it looks good. It looks like they're all their key players are going to go in this one. So if Devonta misses, that'll really probably be the only key injury across the two teams for this game.
Yeah, and at this time of year, that the
That doesn't
Rams
happen much.
the Rams have been through the ringer for most of the year.
So far, yeah.
They there's some that's the reason they're 5-5. So I do think Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are there the entire year. We're probably talking about a 7-win team, maybe even an 8-win team, and this is a really big game. So maybe this is a little bit understated what kind of foe this is, with those guys being out there. But I still like the Eagles in the matchups in general. I mean, clearly they're the more talented team. But we saw a 2-win team beat an 8-win team last night. That's the NFL.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And this Rams team, look, they're 4-1 in the last 5. They were started 1-4. So obviously they're playing better football now than they did at the start of the year, and that's part of the reason they're at 5-5. But since they've had all their players, they have definitely been a better team. Still looked a little suspect last week versus the Dolphins, but I think this team is one of those teams you don't take lightly. And if you don't have Devonta out there, John, how does that shift your offensive strategy? I mean, you look at this Rams defense, you want to target the secondary. That's you think you can make a lot of hay targeting that secondary. Now with no Devonta, Dallas Goedert should have a bigger role. Jahan Dotson, I mean, every time we've talked about Jahan Dotson having a bigger role this year, including the week that there was no AJ or Devonta, he still didn't have a big game. So maybe he gets more involved this week.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people blame Jahan. I think Jahan's been fine. I really do. In very limited opportunities. Not saying he's a home run by any stretch, because they don't use their third receivers.
Yeah.
And that's been historic, way before Jahan Dotson ever got here. So When he's gotten the opportunity, unlike some of the other third receivers here, he's made some plays at least. So from that, I'd look at it as a positive. Whether they can get it going with Jahan Dotson instead of Devonta Smith, well, they can't get it going with Devonta Smith. So I'm not expecting them to get the passing game going to a high level with Jahan Dotson instead of Devonta Smith, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I mean, I've been talking about it all week. The passing game is the biggest issue with this team right now. And without Devonta Smith, similar to when they didn't have A.J. Brown earlier in the season, it makes it even less likely that it's going to be going to get going, even though, as you mentioned, if you look at the Rams logically, you might want to attack that secondary. They have the talent to do it, but I haven't seen it. So it's kind of hard to predict it if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how it plays out. Will Dallas Goedert be a bigger role in this game? I think eventually we got to see that, but I don't know how much they're going to use that. Should be interesting to see what the Birds will do in this matchup. John, before we get to Scott Grayson, any other key things sticking out at you in this game other than that it's a good NFC matchup? Can't take the team lightly. What other key matchups in this game do you see as potential?
I mean, I don't like the Rams defense as a whole, so that's where I look at. It's not like they're going to show up and stop Saquon Barkley in this running game either. So, I mean, even though they're on paper, they're better against the run than the pass. I just don't like the matchup from the Rams' perspective, player-wise. And then the Eagles' defense is playing so well. A little bit of concern with a quarterback who, as we brought up a number of times last week when CJ told me after the game the plan was to make Jaden Daniels play quarterback. I think it's the exact opposite. Don't let Matthew Stafford play quarterback. So a little bit of concern with Matthew Stafford, but not a ton. He's 36 years old. He's not what he once was. Vic generally figures it out as the game progresses. But I mean, if like a starting pitcher, if somebody has, one hit, two hit stuff in baseball, well, you're in for a long night. If he's hot, you might be in for a long night. But I don't, we talk about percentages and margin of error. I don't like the styles for this game for the Los Angeles Rams. I don't know what they hang their hat on defensively.
Other than getting after the quarterback, I mean,
they're not getting after the quarterback. Everybody's talking about Jared Verse. Think about the level of edge rushers the Eagles have played. Even though they played some bad teams, think about the level of edge rushers they played through this stretch. And now Jordan's back and Lane. Funniest moment yesterday, Jalix Honda asked him if he's had his welcome to the NFL moment yet. He said, shout out to Lane Johnson. So it wasn't anybody else. It was like he said, I didn't snip the quarterback for weeks, because he had to get going against poor Lane. I mean, right. I can't worry about Jared Verse. I mean, come on.
I mean, Hurts has given him 20. He has 28 sacks taken this year. He had 36 total last year, John.
Well,
I don't think it's about the offensive line. I think it's more about the quarterback
holding on to the football.
Well, so I think that I think that's a factor here.
Well, then but I'm saying, I think a lot of people, from the perspective of, if you just do what you're supposed to do, it's not going to be an issue.
Yeah.
If you don't do what you're supposed to do, yeah, of course it's going to be an issue. But I'm not worried about Jared Verse against Jordan or Lane Johnson.
No, I'm not
worried about it.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the particular matchup, but the quarterback's taking a lot of sacks this year. Whether that's on the offensive line. He
always takes a lot of sacks. I mean, hasn't anyone not noticed that? I mean, that's part of having a quarterback that extends plays. Those
Yeah,
quarterbacks are
that
going to
number
take
feels like
more
it's higher
snaps.
this year. He's up. I mean, his high was 22, where he had 38. He's got 28 already through 10 games this year.
Well, we've talked in the Super Bowl season, we've talked about time to throw ad nauseum.
Yeah.
He's too high. And it's got to come down a little bit. And then those sack numbers will come down a little bit. But when in theory, like when Myles Garrett is on the schedule, or as you saw last night, if you watch the game, or Micah Parsons is on the schedule, or Nick Bosa is on the schedule, then you go, oh, that's some heavy lifting. Maybe Jared Verse becomes that, but I'm not putting him in that category at this stage, especially against these tackles.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. We'll see how it plays out in this game. They got a couple decent guys in the secondary. Cameron Kitchens, who's that rookie player who's been a little suspect in coverage, but he did win 2 Rookie of the Week awards the last 2 weeks, and he's been a ball hawk, forcing turnovers. So we'll see if he has any impact on that game or anybody in the secondary for the Rams. Let's get to our first commercial break, John. We'll talk to Scott Grayson from Fox 29. Looking forward to talking to Scott. We were supposed to catch up with Scott yesterday. We'll do it instead today. And then in hour number 2, we will dive deep into this game, into the key matchups, the players. And then at the end of the show, the much anticipated predictions. We will give our predictions on the way out before this Sunday night matchup. So big thanks to everybody for being here. Hit that like button. Before we get to the break, let me tell you guys about the great people at BetUS. You can see the promo code I put on your screen. It's YouTube150. It gives you a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit, and you get 125% on your second and third deposit, all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. We'll be back in 3 minutes, everybody, on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.